My name is Rafael, you're watching Rock and Roll Garage. Today I'm going to show you two Black Sabbath albums that Slash loves. But first, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Well, the Guns N' Roses guitarist is a big fan of Black Sabbath. He already recorded with Ozzy Osbourne during the past years on his solo albums, and had recorded much before with Ozzy as well. Ozzy was part of his solo album back in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. He played the guitar solo on Motorhead's ballad I Ain't No Nice Guy, which also had Ozzy in it. And he's a good friend of Ozzy and his family as well. And he's a big fan of Black Sabbath. And we selected two albums, Black Sabbath albums, that Slash already praised and said were important for him. The first one, it is the groundbreaking self-titled debut album, Black Sabbath, released in 1970. The album that created heavy metal music. It was recorded with the classic lineup, obviously, Ozzy Osbourne, Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, and Tony Iommi. Only in a few days in 1969, and released a few months later in 1970. And Slash said it was one of his favorite albums of all time, a couple of times. And he talked about it once with Matt or Hammer in 2020. They questioned which album he would give to a kid that asked him what heavy metal was. And he chose this album, and this is what he said. Nothing can touch Black Sabbath in terms of nailing the sound of metal. Tony Iommi, a fucking genius. That's what he said about him. The album has, besides that fantastic title track, it also has some other good songs like NIB, fantastic guitar riff and bass intro, The Wizard, Behind the Wall of Sleep, and Evil Woman, for example. It reached it peaked at number 8 on the United Kingdom albums chart when it was released, and number 23 on the United States Billboard 200 back then, during that era. And in 2014, Slash had already listed this album in an interview with Music Radar as one of the records that changed his life, and he called it pure evil. And this is what he said. This was another very eventful record for me. Sabbath's debut album, in my opinion. There is no more ominous rock and roll record than this one. I don't care what band you come up with. Black Sabbath's first album tops them all. On every level, it's the sound of pure evil. So that's a great definition for the first Black Sabbath album. And as I said before, he was lucky enough to work with Ozzy Osbourne a couple of times. He invited Ozzy for his self-titled solo album released in 2010. And Ozzy performed on the song Crucify the Dead. Slash also honored Ozzy in 2014 at the MTV EMA, performing the classic song Crazy Train alongside Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, with Ozzy watching them in the audience, and many other times he had the chance to play with him. And the second album, it's Black Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, released in 1973, another classic Black Sabbath album. And it is one of Slash's favorite ones. And this was a very good album. And in an interview with Planet Rock in 2020, they were transcribed to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Black Sabbath. Slash revealed that the title track of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath was his favorite song of the band. And this is what he said. My favorite Sabbath song is Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. I think is the heaviest metal song of all time. Tony Iommi is a great guy, but very unassuming. A lot of the really legendary guitar players, especially, are very just sort of low-key, you know? They just like to forget who they are when you're hanging out with them, because they don't give that air of like, I'm great. You know that they are. That's what he said about being around Tony Iommi, a guitarist that inspired him a lot. And in an interview with Matt Pinfield in 2022, he said that he loves all the earliest Black Sabbath albums, but Sabbath Bloody Sabbath was the one who impacted him the most, that inspired him the most. And he said, I also love the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath record, besides the debut album. I mean, really all those records. But the first one and the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath record probably had the biggest impact on me. And the title track, that breakdown towards the end of the song, there's just nothing that's ever come out that's heavier than that. Not one band that I can think of has a riff that is as heavy as Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Now that's a bold statement, and it's certainly one of the greatest Black Sabbath songs, one of the greatest guitar riffs. Too bad they didn't play this track entirely during their final reunions during the past years. And Slash will be on Black Sabbath's final show, festival, let's say, in Birmingham, England in 2025. He will be there, Duff McKagan and Axl Rose, all his bandmates. Guns N' Roses will perform a few songs there. And that shows his connection with Black Sabbath. He will be at the final show, and he's a big fan of Black Sabbath. And I hope you like the video. These are really interesting stuff about Slash and Black Sabbath. If you want to read more, go to the description, visit the article we wrote about it. Please like the video, leave a comment, visit rockandrollgarage.com, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I see you later.